Hi, and welcome to the Soul and Survival podcast with Grant and Louise Bentley. We have run the Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy since 1995. We are both qualified practicing homeopaths, and Grant is also a naturopath. Together, we discovered a link between energy and facial structure based on traditional ideas from homeopathy that have roots going back 200 years. This project is called Homeopathic Facial Analysis, or HFA for short, and has been the cornerstone of clinical diagnosis and training courses since 1999. Between us, we have written and produced 7 HFA books, including Soul and Survival. Soul and Survival is the philosophy of energy influencing matter and how this energy forms individual facial structure, our unconscious drives and fears, our life patterns, and universal time cycles.
Hi again, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Soul and Survival. And we did leave off somewhere last week, didn't we? Where were we?
Where were we? We were looking at the book How Aphorism 27 Changed the World. We were in, I believe now, chapter 6, and we've just opened it up, so it's a bit random, but there's so many topics to discuss, and we were starting to slide into quantity of remedies. So let me read a little bit and then have a think about this. So you had discussed about things developing because there's need, like the wheel doesn't have to change its shape. Once you're happy with something, like really happy with something, and you referred to HFA and how you're pretty happy with HFA, it doesn't do 100% for 100% of people, but it does an awful lot for an awful lot. So that's pretty good. You said homeopathy developed because of need. Conventional medicine evolved from that same need, the need to improve medical practice, to increase its success rate and to improve the health of patients beyond what was the norm at the time. If leeches were a successful cure-all medicine, practitioners would never have stopped using them. With an open mind, this same logic needs to be applied to contemporary homeopathy. Today, in the treatment of chronic disease, there are more interpretations and miasmatic theories than there are homeopaths, and more new exotic remedies than there are patients. This influx, in spite of the fact that Hahnemann's own medical kit at the end of his life had only 150 remedies, give or take, and his writings suggest he only used half of those regularly. Suddenly, modern homeopathy cannot survive without a new remedy every week. If this meant we were more successful than Hahnemann at treating acute or chronic disease, then the demand for these exotics would be justified. But who in current times is achieving with their thousands of remedies more than Hahnemann did with his 70 or so?
Yeah. Well, I think that sort of says it all. You're sort of looking at me as if I should have something to add to that, but I kind of think that says it all.
Well, how many remedies do you use?
Oh, yeah. Look, I'd be lucky to touch 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've got about 100, and we've got around 70 odd that we've absolutely allocated, and about another 50 that were
there'd be about 50 remedies that I would use fairly consistently.
Yeah.
And then those other 50, which would also include some of the cell salts, they're for sort of like general maintenance or one symptom problems sometimes.
You need to separate the difference between cell salts and the other 50 remedies here, because the cell salts you're using for general maintenance.
Yeah, I'm doing for general maintenance, but also too for one problems. Okay,
so you still occasionally trial that.
Yeah, look, I'll still if a person is in otherwise good health and I've got them to a pretty good spot, but the only thing that they can't do is that they can't fall asleep for 2 hours. Well, I'll have a go at kefir, and let's just see if we can go somewhere
there.
You're
saying for you, keynotes are still somewhat used, but as a last resort, not the first thing you do.
For some reason, there are just some cases where the constitutional will do pretty much everything, and by pretty much I mean that there are 1 or 2 symptoms that are left behind, and it just doesn't seem to want to touch them.
And yet the others have been markedly improved.
And yet the other ones have been markedly improved. Now, some cases I don't worry about it. I just sort of turn around and I sort of suggest, well, look, we might be reaching that where that old phrase, what can't be cured must be endured. But that's only if it's not really that serious. However, when it's something like sleep, for example, I feel as if I have to do something there, because if you don't do something there, then the whole person's constitution is going to slide back. Right? You go without sleep or disordered sleep for too long and you're back to where you started from, because sleep is where we download the energy of the day, right? Sleep is the way we succuss our thoughts and emotions and our experiences onto the ether. Okay, so because you don't do it any other way. Sleep is the way that is the medium in which you do it.
We all know a good night's sleep, and the world can look a whole lot better the next day.
So I'm going to really try there. But if someone sort of says, I go, well, how's the depression? I feel good. I feel motivated. And, that really sort of disordered stomach, that the nausea that was no, that's all fine. That's really good. Is your sleep good? Yeah, sleep's good. The only thing is that I've just got this really kind of itchy, dry patch of skin on my big toe.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just not going to risk changing for the gains that we've already made. Mm-hmm. So because it's inconsequential, really, it might be annoying. I'm not saying it's not annoying, but I just sort of think, no.
So you put everything into a hierarchy, don't you? When you look at the symptoms.
Well, because it's Herring's Law. It tells you to do that.
I was going to say, right? Herring's Law. You use Herring's Law as a guide to the importance of symptoms, yeah?
Herring's Law is absolutely vital, but you're not going to see it all the time. Now, see if you take it as a law, and I've had other practitioners that have written to me, and they say, yeah, look, these people seem to be doing well, but there's no reversal of symptoms. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean you're not doing a good job. It just means that if reversal of symptoms is there, now you know what it means. You can apply this philosophy to it and understand what's going on. So Herring's Law is not a law. It's not something that absolutely the body must follow. But what it does do is that it works as a guideline to help you as a practitioner not be fooled by a changing picture. Mm. You know when it's changing for better, and if it is, you just keep it going. If it's changing for worse, you stop and you change the remedy. Point number 1 too in that, which is really important, that people should know, is about things like antidotes. And the best antidote for a wrong remedy is a right remedy.
This is just another good one.
Just redo it and apply the right one.
And it's difficult bringing up that. We get a lot of questions from patients who, many people that come to the clinic have been to other homeopaths. It's kind of tricky because we are all in the same profession, but we don't do things the same way at all. And patients don't understand that. They think it's like medicine where there's a real goose step approach, let's face it. Any doctor that goes out a step in conventional medicine soon finds their license revoked and that sort of thing. They operate in it's quite a strong model, I have to say. It's a very strong model, but not necessarily in the interests of the patient all the time. But in homeopathy, it can be a little bit the opposite, where we're not operating in goose step at all. That's okay. But we don't have some homeopaths are so different that we can't quite comprehend what they're doing. So, we're always gentle with patients on these topics, but some of the topics that come up are an expectation of an aggravation, an expectation of a healing crisis. And, that brings me back to this aphorism 27 chapter that we were talking about last week.
Well, just before you do, remember Hahnemann did say constantly all the way through the 6th edition of the Organon that homeopathy is no place for just random speculations. So he himself is not saying, look, the world's so individual, you just join in and do your own individual way of practicing. He's not saying that at all. He's saying exactly the opposite.
He wants a bit more of a goose step approach.
Well, he says in one aspect, he said anyone that deviates even the breadth of a straw from my teachings is no longer my disciple.
He may have gone a little bit too far there.
Look, perhaps, one too many sherry with that one back then.
We all have our faults, and even old Hahnemann had faults. And this is one of the things you're pointing out in this book too.
But you know what, though? You need that kind of arrogance to see this through.
Yeah,
and
sure.
He was arrogant. I mean, the guy would, look, love him to death, but do I want him as a dinner party guest? No.
Oh, I bet you would, just for one dinner party. It'd be fun.
No, he'll embarrass all the neighbours.
Okay.
He'll start on a rant.
That's okay. We can
it.
put up with it. That's all right. One dinner party would be fun.
All right, one, but he's not getting an invite. I'm putting my foot down.
Oh, geez, poor old Hahnemann. Anyway, I'm going back to Hahnemann and the healing crisis because you're going off on a tangent again, and everybody loves you for it. But my role in life is to keep you on the straight and narrow. Sorry, Grant.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it?
Isn't that a shame? So here's a quote from Hahnemann. Were that nature, whose self-help in diseases is believed by physicians of the traditional school to be the most incomparable healing art, a close imitation of which should be the physician's highest name, great nature herself, ... So that's a quote from Hahnemann. Then you go on to say the traditional school, orthodox or conventional medicine, were giving patients purgatives and leeches because the traditional school believed it was following nature's lead by imitating her, which is kind of ironic, isn't it? Mm-hmm. When we get sick, we will often have a fever, which when it reaches crisis point breaks, leaving us sweaty but feeling better. By imitating nature and developing artificial ways of bringing on sweating or a fever, the traditional school is reproducing the healing crisis and creating a natural resolution, naturals in dibbies. In its own bizarre way, this philosophy was orthodox medicine's version of the law of similars. This traditional method of thinking, which sought to imitate nature by bringing disease to a head, continues to exist in many current alternative philosophies, labelled as a healing crisis. This healing crisis is still very much a part of contemporary practice and looked on as a positive sign by modern naturopaths and many homeopaths. The healing crisis is consistently used to explain why some patients throw out, in dibbies, symptoms. As a result, homeopathy believes that for any patient wishing to undertake a homeopathic treatment, not all homeopathy, you should have said, maybe contemporary homeopathy there, the idea that they will become dramatically worse before they start to feel better must be understood. So do you want to comment on that? Because that's such a big one with questions, and people make so many erroneous presuppositions in regard to that.
Oh, they do. And I've even had patients that will look me in the eye and go, now, I understand this. Now, you're going to be making me much worse, aren't you? And I said, well, if I'm going to be making you worse, why are you coming here?
Yeah. Well, no, they've left the second bit off. They do expect better afterwards.
No, because that is the bit about the healing crisis that needs to be understood. Mm-hmm. Now, that's the point that I'm trying to make. So when you say sort of categorically that, oh, look, they need to understand it, that's the bit that's actually left out sometimes, because I know people that have gone through weeks and weeks and weeks of this stuff. And
just waiting for
just
something
to be
good.
told that this is a healing crisis and it's a purging. So let's get this straight. A healing crisis can occur. In homeopathy, it's called an aggravation, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing.
Yep.
But there's two types of aggravation. There is an aggravation because your remedy is wrong and an aggravation because your remedy is right. The difference between the two is that when your remedy is right, the aggravation is short and sharp, but it is followed by an amelioration.
Yep.
If you don't get that amelioration and you just stay in the same place as aggravation, then you're aggravating because of a wrong remedy. And now that wrong remedy needs to be changed. Whether it's homeopathic, whether it's herbal, whether it's a dietary program that somebody has put you on, it's all the same. If you are immediately worse but then start to improve, that's tolerable. And we're not trying to make you worse.
But it's okay. Yeah.
But it's okay. It's a little, I often say this to people, it's kind of like when you start exercise. If you haven't done any exercise for a decade or two and you think to yourself, well, I've just got to get myself fitter, this is ridiculous, then starting the exercise can make for a really miserable 1 to 7 days. But after that, you start, your muscles get stronger, your endurance gets longer, your flexibility starts getting better. And that's, if you apply that same logic, but I'm not saying that it should last 7 days. It really should only be anywhere between about 1 and 4, but I have seen it go 7.
Yeah, but it's less common.
But that's because the person's problem is deep.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm getting concerned if it's going 7.
Yeah, you like to see the body recognise the resonance of that remedy and start to show, even if it's just 10%, 20%, something going in the right direction.
Yeah. So for a couple of days, occasionally, but I don't want it. Right? So this is point number 1. I don't expect or want the aggravation first. I try my best to avoid it. For example, if I think that you're really sensitive or perhaps your pathology is really severe, I will not start with anything above a 30. Or I might even in some cases drop to a 6 and start there.
Yeah.
Then also, I've lost track of my thought then.
Aggravation, 1 to 3 days or more than 7.
Yeah, but even though I'm dropping it back,
yeah,
it can still occur. But
Yeah.
I'm not.
You don't expect it or even
I'm
particularly
not
need it.
working towards it.
And you don't need it. You can start healing without an aggravation.
You absolutely can, and that's my main aim.
And most people do, by the way.
Yeah, they do.
Here's another thing I see, and I know you see it a lot, is that things are going along really well and then some virus or something comes into the household, or perhaps they go to the dentist and get, some drilling done in a tooth, which is pretty intense for the body to take, and they start feeling pretty bad for a few days because they've essentially been stressed out and or are sick, and then they go, am I having an aggravation? That's common, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they are having an aggravation of their symptoms, but it's nothing to do with the homeopathic in that case.
No, and often some of them will stop taking it. Oh, I stopped taking it. So what do you say?
Well, you've done the wrong thing, but I won't.
You love that word.
No. I don't actually say that to them.
No, I know.
So what I do though, so let's explain what has happened. I have, via the remedies, because remember, I don't do it. I only just select it.
And the individual
the
patient
remedy
has
does the work.
One remedy, yep. Mm-hmm.
So I, through the remedies, have got you to a better state, and then either a new medicine, dental treatment, whatever it is, the examples that you gave.
Mm-hmm.
You're still not in a strong enough state to be able to fight that and recuperate quickly, right? Because whatever condition that you had pre that, yes, it's better. It's better in the sense that the signs and symptoms aren't strong, but not all the weaknesses have been bridged over like
Yep.
we spoke about
Yeah.
last time. That takes time. That
Sure.
takes a lot of time.
Yep.
And so now what happens is that, let's just do the dental work. So a kid with pandas or behavioural problems comes in, we get them to a pretty good state, and then they have braces put on or they have a lot of dental work. That just upsets the nerves like crazy, sends their still touchy nervous system into a state of fight or flight again. And because it's now going into that state of fight or flight, all of those symptoms that pre-existed and exhibited themselves because of that state now come back again. Now, what people do that's a really big mistake is that they say, oh, well, I quick, like you said, I stopped the remedy. I just stopped it. No, it was the remedy that got you out of it, right? So you actually, for a short period of time, you need more of it to get you back into a state of quiescence, right? It's not about less. It's actually
Which is kind of weird.
momentarily about more.
Everything about homeopathy is less in the process of making the remedy, but when it comes to taking the remedy, the frequency of taking it, it's an interesting thing that the better you're healing, the less you need. But when you go through a healing issue with a virus or dental or whatever, you need more support during that time.
You do. You need more support.
You need more frequency.
And I'll tell you another way that
you teach patients that though, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Look, I try and teach patients as much as their interest allows.
Yeah, which varies, of course. Some people like to see it just as a quick fix medicine.
Well, it's like,
and others are really
I always
interested.
sort of think, no one likes a boring mechanic, like someone who tells you every detail.
Do you want me to tell you all about your spark plugs?
Unless you're really into cars.
Yeah.
So I don't, with every patient, I don't sort of look at the mum or the person and say, okay, now I want you to brace yourself because I'm going to lecture you now for 3 hours on what's going on. I answer questions rather than deliver sermons. So I will answer as many questions as you want. I don't hold back on any information, but I don't bombard people with it either. Now, again, I'm off track.
That's okay.
Where were we?
You
Because there was something. Oh no, I'll tell you where what's important is that when you were talking about keeping people on remedies and so on, and the frequency, and the healthier they become, the less frequent you need to give it, and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But it's also a really good judge of how far down the mine shaft of pathology someone is by how many remedies you need to change before they're stable.
That's an interesting comment. Do go on.
You sounded...
I have never heard you said anything in that particular way.
No, I was going to say you sounded so Victorian.
Oh, sorry about that. No, I'm just trying to be...
What an interesting comment. Do go on.
I'm trying to be
Watercress
supportive.
sandwich, anyone?
And I'm reminded how you have this ability to surprise me. And I think I've known you for so long and I've listened to thousands of hours of your friendly conversations / lectures. No, that's a bit mean. No, your friendly conversations. I've never heard you say that before, so I'm really genuinely pleased. Do go on.
No. It's one of those. Remember when I was talking about? Was it last week or the week before, where the case management is where the real idiosyncrasy is.
Oh, you've said it a few times.
The idiosyncrasy of the person, the individuality.
Yep.
It's where your skill is as a practitioner. The skill is not in the remedy selection because the symptoms are telling you that. All you need to do is know how to repertorise. If you know how to repertorise, then you're really selecting the first remedy really shouldn't be that difficult. If you don't know how to repetrise, then you should be a mechanic and you should get out of this.
You've got to learn how to repetrise, and you've got to learn how to do a really
There's
good facial analysis.
No room for anyone with guesswork here.
No,
I don't like that.
Fair. It's not fair on the patient, you know. No. They deserve more. They've already been through a lot. They're pretty sick in a lot of cases.
Do you know I still repetrise every single patient?
I do know you do
without a guess at all.
Yeah, every time.
Every
query.
Doing this for 35 years.
Yeah.
So if anyone should have gut instinct, it's me. But the reality is that I don't do that. And I don't like anyone who does, particularly beginners
it's a
who decide
thing
to make these speculative
And it doesn't
guesses.
take long to repetrise. You can repetrise a case in 1 to 2 minutes. Honestly, it's a lovely thing to do, to just check across that array of, you know, that 100, 150 remedies. You don't know all those symptoms. That's 1 million, 2, 3 million pieces of information. How can you cross-reference all of that and determine that your gut instinct says, you know, it's remedy X?
You haven't got enough experience for gut instinct.
You might
anyway.
even think that. Let's face it, we're all egotistical. We love to be right, you know. Oh, I picked that remedy. I knew it, which is kind of a bit silly, really, because all you did was learn some keynote years back that you're referring to. But the reality is you might be thinking, say, you're with a yellow patient, you might be thinking, oh, it's got pulsatilla written all over it. And then you repetrise, and goodness me, there's carbo-veg. Didn't think of that. Well, of course you didn't think of it, because there's too much information to be doing keynotes if you want to really do good generalised totality homeopathy. So yes, please, everybody, always repetrise.
Yeah. And there's no excuses for not doing it. It's not like the old days when we first started learning where you're doing paper repetrisations, which could take you an hour. You can do a repetrisation in 5 minutes now. If
on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad. I mean, homeopathy should have taken off in leaps and bounds since the late 90s because of computer software. In fact, in HFA it has. I mean, that's been an amazing help to us being good at homeopathy.
Yeah, and yet it hasn't.
Overall, I don't think homeopathy is better than the 80s or 90s, but I think HFA is a genuinely...
We're certainly not. We're not more popular as a profession.
No, not really. I mean, people say we are, but we are. We're incredibly busy, and I mean, that sounds ridiculously egotistical. We're actually trying to sort out ways to manage the amount of new patients we're getting. And, you know, people are on long waiting lists. We're doing our very best. But, you know, the reality is cases need attention and time, no matter what process you're using. Even with HFA, we need time to work it through.
That's because the HFA philosophy, dare I say, is not specious.
No, it's deep.
The practice proves it. And one of the interesting things when you talk about, well, you didn't, but I did, talk about sort of specious arguments and so on, is that we developed, or I developed, along with a lot of suggestions from you. So you always give me dirty looks when I say we.
I do not give you dirty looks.
Because you want me to sort of say I, but I'm not.
It's not 50-50.
No, but I'm not going to say why. I mean I, because you did contribute a lot, and even if it was just by questions, it's a contribution. So anyway, that another day maybe. You know, but anyway, the main point is that when I developed HFA and then you came along for the ride afterwards, because you were sceptical at the beginning.
I was very sceptical. Absolutely. You made some moves that I thought, oh, are you sure?
I stripped it right down.
Got to remember, I really liked keynotes in Materia Medica. You never did.
Well, everyone does.
You used to say the gold in homeopathy is in the philosophy. It's in the philosophy and the theory. And I used to think, oh, really? Come on, it's in the Materia Medica. You'd go, no, it's not there. It's in the other. And you were right.
No, it's not in the Materia Medica. The Materia Medica is leading more people astray.
Absolutely.
You need to know how to repetrise, though.
Yes.
And Anyway, the point that I was trying to make
When
was
I developed HFA,
what I did
in
was
you,
yeah,
not me.
okay, all right, I get it. All right, so the main thing though is that I stripped it back to only a couple of principles. All right, and the first principle is that nature knows what it's doing if it's not pushed too far.
well, how do you know, though, when that point is?
Well, you know it because if someone is craving plaster, like what we said
Too
last
far.
week, that's too far.
Yep.
If someone decides that, oh, gee, maybe a good idea for my headache is to run head first into a brick wall, because, some people try, I'm not saying that they should do that, but they try to relieve their pain. I mean, I've known people that have had such bad stomach pain that they'll go over the corner of a desk or something and put all of their body weight onto it just to try and get some relief.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're having to go to those sort of extremes, no, those symptoms are symptoms of disorder. But so nature can heal. That's point number one. And point number two is that the similimum is correct.
Yeah.
Right. So I just stuck with those two principles, and then I stripped it back, and everything, and I mean everything, was up for grabs.
Yeah, it was pretty confronting at the time.
So what I did is I did single dose was up for grabs. I did multiple remedies, all in the same vial. I did repeated doses. I did single doses. I did LM potencies, X potencies. I did centesimal potencies. I stripped it back and tried absolutely everything. Then what I did was that with what worked most consistently, I kept, and I threw out the rest. And then around what was working, I then developed the philosophy to explain what was working. So in HFA, the philosophy did not come first. It wasn't a bright idea of how things work.
It was a little bit of an idea that you then tested, stripped apart, reworked, looked at until such a time as you said, this is pretty good. And I look back now and I think compared to now, it was only basic good, not pretty good. But at the time, basic good was better. So we were pretty impressed with basic good. But you then spent a couple of years, I mean, this is Soul and Survival, of course, you then really started to say, well, if this works, if this facial structure is linked to the miasm, if this with totality leads to better remedies, what does this even mean? And that's where I love Soul and Survival as a book.
Well, and we're back full circle to the comment of when you need a lot of change of remedies, the more disordered state that you're in.
Oh, that's right. That was that was your interesting comment. But you also said something about the state of mind of the patient and how many times you're changing the remedy and what that means.
The more you need to change the remedy to keep up with the changing picture of the case, the more disordered that person is.
Right. Because
that's what I'm saying.
So what you're saying is even their body can't hold itself in a certain position.
You're reaching a stage of adaptation far too quickly.
Yeah.
And your whole body's like in this ADHD state, your immune system and your nervous system. And so it's bored with that. Let's get on with the new thing. But you see, once you get on to a few good remedies, one, instead of lasting 2 weeks and then you have to change, it starts going 4 weeks and then 6 weeks, and then finally you can get them onto eventually remedies where they are staying on the same remedy for long periods of time.
And so the longer a remedy's working for you, you think that the patient's mentally and physically in a better place.
Oh, absolutely.
They are.
They've
found their groove. I've got this one lady, I don't even know how old she is now, but I think she's been with me 10 years or more. And when she came, she was in her late 70s, so she's in her late 80s now. And she came with quite a severe lung problem, and I worked out the miasm pretty quickly. and obviously she's stayed in that miasm. And I think I've changed remedies 3 times, but essentially I come back to remedy 2 about 80 or 90% of the time. And it amazes me. She just takes it and she ticks along, and her health in her late 80s is significantly better than her health in her late 70s. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. Because what you're doing, the remedy is, it's a no thing, right? Mm. But what it is doing is that, you know how the body divides the entire universe into self and non-self. There's only 2 brackets, and it likes one of those, the self, and it doesn't like anything else. It just rejects it, which is why we're here to experience self, by the way, but a topic for perhaps some other time. But the main thing that a remedy does is, because you've been guided by the symptoms that the body itself has generated.
So it's a reflection of self.
It's a reflection of self.
Yeah.
So what happens now is the body takes that energy as self-energy, and it utilizes that self-energy as if it had energy in abundance.
Yeah.
Right? Because it does, whereas previously it did not, because it was being either seconded by the fight or flight response, or you were doing stupid things and not eating, the proper diet, or
stress and your response
or whatever
to stress.
It might be. So now you end up, because that's all that chronic disease is, a misappropriation, or somehow it's a deficit of vital energy.
Self-energy.
Self-energy. And now a remedy is just supplying that same self-energy. And now your body just goes, well, I know what to do with this. Now we've got what we need and we're going to utilise it. And that's all that a remedy does. So this is this silly, can a remedy fix ... Yes, it can, providing your body can fix it. As long as it's fixable, a constitutional remedy can fix pretty much anything that is fixable.
If it's not too late, if that deep pathology hasn't gone so far that there's organ damage to an extent that rebuilding it's going to take a long time, and you may just not have enough left in your life force to do that. Can I just end on going back to this chapter on the healing crisis, because what a great conversation. I've really enjoyed this. You wrote, what modern homeopaths need to realise is that despite the dominance of the Mother Nature theory and the replication of natural reaction that was the philosophy of the time, Hahnemann became increasingly unconvinced of its efficacy until finally he opposed it both in its philosophy and in its practice. This is now a quote from Hahnemann. Ineffable wisdom of the great artificer of the infinite universe, we should then feel constrained to be guided by this infallible voice, though we might be puzzled to understand why we physicians should, with our artificial interference by medicines, disturb or injuriously aggravate these presumably incomparable operations of nature's self-help. End of quote. And you go on to say, if nature is perfect and always knows best, then why do we need medicine at all? In fact, Hahnemann clearly states that if nature was perfect, then any interference on any level by medicines of any kind would be a hindrance, not a help. So that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
that he clearly saw that,
Well, he does, because he's a physician. He's in need of it.
And really ahead of his time, and yet still alternative.
Yeah. So it's not saying don't live as natural a lifestyle as your lifestyle allows. That's a good thing to do. But he's just sort of saying that the program is good at dealing with things only up to a point. Once it's like a rubber band, once it's stretched beyond its capability to be able to bounce back, then now you've got a completely new groove in your system.
And you see patients, don't you, that they don't even like taking a remedy every day. It's an odd thing. Like this older lady I'm talking about, she's more than happy. She can see the difference and she's happy to stick with it. She doesn't see medicine as a deplorable thing, including a remedy. But some people do. They feel like they've got to do it all themselves and that there's something unnatural about it.
Well, they see it as a weakness that they should have been overcoming, and if a remedy was truly successful, then that remedy should put itself out of business. And it can. If you're a child, teenager, person in their 20s where things are going your way, but when you've got work stresses, perhaps home stresses, when you've got financial stresses, it's not that easy.
No. And
it's saying you're going to have the same amount of energy despite all of the weight that the world is throwing on you, and you're going to be able to generate it all yourself. Sometimes we just need a bit of help. It's just that simple.
Well, just to finish up then, I'm going to read this one more paragraph because that's pretty much summarises it. Hahnemann said this is far from being the case, meaning, nature just can't do it all. He says, you go on and say, this is Grant Bentley here, medicine has played a vital role in human development for as long as people have existed. From the dawn of time, humankind has needed to set bones, relieve headaches, stop bleeding and repair wounds, as well as preventing or treating infection. The fact that early treatments were not always effective or that the earliest origins of medicine were perhaps more magical than rational is irrelevant. Hahnemann's point was that nature alone, if left to herself, was often incapable of doing what needed to be done to heal a suffering patient. People have always needed additional help in the treatment of disease. In Hahnemann's mind, this meant that nature's disease-fighting skills were anything but perfect. There you go.
Yeah. I don't think I've got anything to add except I'll see you all next week.
Okay, thanks, Grant. Another interesting talk.
Okay, bye all.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Soul and Survival. If you are interested in more information, books, courses, consultations, learning more about facial analysis or life themes, please visit our college site, Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy, vcch.org.